Hi guys, welcome back to another feature of my vlog. And today I'm doing another interview with a close friend of mine. As I mentioned before, not everybody wants to leave corporate life, or not everybody is outside of corporate life and have taken that leap to journey on. But there are different leaps that one can take within corporate life, and I'm here to talk to one such person who did take a leap, still being in corporate life, and it's a good friend of mine called Louis Da Costa. Hi Lou, how are you?
Hi there. Hey, how you doing? Come on.
I am
Long time
good.
no speak.
Long time no speak, long time no
Uh,
see. But we do text, so
yeah,
here and
that's
there
true. That's
for
true. That
birthdays
counts.
and all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We do keep in touch that way, so that's a good thing. All right.
Yes. So as everybody can hear from the accent, you're my Yardie friend, my Jamaican peeps.
That's right. Born and bred.
Born and bred, yes. And you
That's
actually
right.
live in the US.
Yep, I'm living in New York, which is
Yeah,
where I
that's
met you. All
yeah,
right.
that's where we met. We actually work for the same company for a few.
That's
You
right.
were already there. Like I had started, and you were already there for a few years.
That's
And then
right.
I was gone again, and you were still there for. Well, I was gone again, and then you were still there for a little bit, and then after. Well, anyway, we'll get into that, right?
Yeah, it's it's that's interesting because it's during that period we never really lost touch. So
Yeah,
I keep forgetting that you did leave for a brief period, all right?
yeah. No, you
On
didn't.
the
I worked for the company twice. I don't think you met me the first time. I'm thinking you met me the second
right.
time, and I came back.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You went and
Yeah.
did your masters,
Yes, exactly.
correct?
Yeah.
That's right. That's
And
right. Okay.
yeah, so then when I met you, I think, you were already with the company for a while. And then
That's
when I
right.
left, I think you were still there for a little bit. And then you
That's right.
finally transitioned somewhere else.
Yeah, escaped is what I call it.
You escape. So we'll get into the escape. We'll get into the escape just now. Okay. So just to give everybody a little idea, could you just tell us a little bit about what you do? You don't have to mention the company. Just tell us what you do, like in a.
Right. Now, yeah, I can give you a broad overview. So right now, my title, I'll start there, right, is Senior Manager of Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery.
Whoa,
Right. So
mouthful.
from the title itself, you can get some sense that it's in the IT world. All right. So yeah,
Really?
you know,
It sound more like disaster management.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. So there's two pieces to that, right? So there's an administrative piece which deals with the disaster management,
Mhm.
and then the IT portion that I deal with on the disaster recovery side is really IT based. Now that doesn't mean that I am a IT SME by no stretch of the imagination, right? I'm more like a project manager that keeps those SMEs on track, and I pull the necessary information that I need to do the work that I need to do whenever a disaster strikes.
Okay, so but
All
when
right.
I met you, right,
hmm
I thought you were in IT.
Yeah, so I started out in so let's talk about that, right? So
Okay.
so we started working for a utility company in New York, right?
Mhm.
And when I started with that company, I started actually in IT. So I was on the infrastructure side doing some networking work, and they needed someone in this role. Now, when I was there, I was kind of just bouncing around trying to find my niche, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? And they needed somebody on this side that wanted to play a part on the administrative side, but had some some foundation knowledge with IT.
Mhm.
And I got it, and I stuck with it, right? Because it's the work itself I enjoy, but sometimes there are other variables and other factors that makes the work a little bit challenging and a little bit more uncomfortable, and I'm sure we'll get into that. All
Yes, of
right. So
course. So you
right,
were one of them who was successful in transitioning your skills. So like you started off in
ex-
IT, but you were able to transition your
right,
skills in other roles, which I think is very important
right.
because I know a lot of people are
Absolutely.
wondering how they could do that, how they could make that transition from being
Right.
in one industry to transition into something else, to transfer their skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would start out by saying this, right? You have to be certain about whether or not that's something that you want to do. Whether if you're a technical person, then your comfort zone might be, in a technical environment, right? Now I was, but I wanted something a little bit more. I thought that I could add a little bit more value on the management side, right, of things. On the project management side of things. So it takes some work. You have to be absolutely sure, because wherever you are and whatever work you're doing, you have to know that it's something you're going to enjoy. If you're not enjoying it, then eventually you're going to make yourself miserable. All right. You
So,
can't.
mhm.
Mhm.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, you can't go. You can't be getting up every morning and performing a task, or going to work to perform a function that you just simply don't enjoy. If you go that route, right, it's just, if eventually it's going to become draining, right? It
Yeah.
has to be something that you really want to do. So again, for me, I knew that I wanted to make that transition. I wanted to test the waters, and when once I did, I found that I did enjoy the management side of things. Right?
Mhm.
So I made that switch. All right. I'm sorry. I have my little guy here just
No
screaming for me
problem.
to
And we
help him.
all, we all, parents juggling stuff, so I
Mhm.
understand. No
Here,
worries.
so you're not gonna see my face for a little while, but I'm gonna keep talking to you. Yeah. Yeah. So you understand where I'm coming from. It again. It has to be something that you really enjoy,
Yeah.
something that something that's not going to make you miserable.
So
All
one
right.
of the
Are
things
you still hearing me?
yeah, I can hear you. So one of the things I would say is that you made two transitions, right? So you not only transitioned to project management, which is a whole big field in and of itself, but you also transitioned into disaster management, which is a big, big field as well. That's
Right.
another huge field. So you were able to do multi transitions in
Yeah.
that
It's
respect.
Yeah, right. So that's a good point. So there were some subtle differences with some things, and some more stark differences with others. Right. So the career switch itself um, wasn't so much of a stark difference between what I was able to do, and what I mean by that is I was able to transfer some skills from my IT role over into the disaster recovery role that I did, right? The business continuity and disaster recovery role that
Did
I
you have
did.
to take a bunch of
So
courses for that? Did you have to do a whole set of coursework before you were able to do
that's
that?
that's a good question. I actually did. I did. I took a project management class, right? And I took what they call a CBCP course, right? So it's a business continuity course that speaks to the whole disaster recovery world. And then since I was with the utility company, they provided a class at the training center that they had on emergency management itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was some catching up that I had to do, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? There was some schooling that I had to go through to kind of learn another piece of the work that I was transferring into.
Okay. Well, I mean, so you already had the job and then you did the coursework?
I did, I did. So
Okay.
I was lucky in that respect, and at the company that we both worked at the
Yeah.
time, we they encourage that sort of thing, right? And that's one of the good things with them, right? They encourage that sort of thing, and they were able to provide the resources that we need in order to coach us up, or teach us, a new set of skill sets. So
And
that
did you network to be able to move into that next industry? Like, did you network before you were doing that? Like, how did you move from one spot to the next?
So I did.
Yeah.
So I absolutely did. So before I transitioned into that DR role, the company I performed exercises, right? Disaster recovery exercises, and there was a piece of that required a recovery of our critical technology, right?
Mhm.
And so they had selected myself and a few other folks to assist with that piece. So
Mhm.
once I got exposed to that world, So, and I'm glad you bring this up. So once I got exposed to that world, I was able to make some connections. I realized that this is something that I could possibly do, in another capacity, in another role. So once I made those connections, I kept those connections alive, and I did some um, some inquisitive work, right? I would ask questions. I would go back to the managers that
Right.
were running the program, speak to them, just to not only learn about more about what they were doing and what the job function was about, but also to really just get a good sense of whether or not it would be something that I would be comfortable with doing, right? I needed to be certain.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
So
glad you
you
asked that
positioned
question. So
yourself.
before making that leap, I actually had done some homework.
So let's talk about the big leap that you had, right? So,
Hmm.
and I'm specifically referring to the fact that you were at that company that we both worked at for a few years. So, how
10.
many years were you there?
So I was there for I was at that company for 10 years as a full-time employee.
Uh-huh.
Quite a bit of time, right? But I say I call out the full-time employee piece because I was also there for almost 3 years as a contractor. So I spent a
Continuously.
to- continuously, right? So I spent a total of 13 years working for the same company uh, for about 13 years. Yeah.
And usually,
Yeah.
when somebody's at a company for that long, because even like 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, usually it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, that's it. And the company that we were at, a lot of people stayed there until retirement because it was almost like
Absolutely.
working for a government company, right? It was like, it's
Yeah,
not a government
absolutely.
company, but there were a lot of
Uh,
attributes it had.
abs-
There were good benefits, there were this, there were that,
yeah.
all these, things to keep you there, all these
No,
incentives.
no, you're absolutely on point with that. As a matter of fact, the public thought that it was a government run entity,
Right.
and that wasn't the case. It was a
Yeah.
private company.
Yeah.
But what had happened was they had adopted some of the same policies and same sort of procedures. They sort of did business like the city government or the state government would. All
Right. So
right.
it's like those kind of companies, you don't leave, you just stay, right?
It's security is the key. I
Yeah.
mean, it's they're and that's why people did not leave, right? They had a,
Right.
a pretty solid pension program
Yeah.
before I came on board, and and some you know it- some they gave you a good comfort level with knowing that you weren't going anywhere. You
Right.
you would really have to do something crazy and ridiculous
Yeah.
to get fired from that job. You know this.
Yes. Of course. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So a lot of people stayed for that reason, whether or not they were happy or not happy. They stayed.
Right.
All
So what
right.
made you decide to take the leap?
So it got to the point. I said before I was there for 13 years, both as a contractor and a full-time employee. Well, just like anywhere else, and I'm glad you've brought up the fact that it was sort of run like a government entity. There was a lot of politics involved. I won't get into the nitty gritty or the details
Right.
now, but the bottom line is that it had gotten to the point where I just felt like I wasn't really growing anymore. I wasn't learning new things. I mentioned before that they encouraged you to move around and shift job functions, but sometimes when you have a difficult time trying to find a good fit or trying to find a way to grow, then eventually you start feeling like you're just you know
Like a
you're
hamster in a wheel.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's how I felt, right? And I gave it a chance, and just like anybody else, I was a little skeptical about leaving. I was a little fearful about leaving, right? Because I'd been there so long, and I knew that it was a secure position. I knew that it was a pretty solid company. um, but I put some thought into it, right? And my biggest
I would
fear,
say you were a lot fearful though, because we had a few conversations about it before you actually
we we
actively
did, and
left.
so what I explored, I wanted to, but there was that inner fear that if I because the grass is not always green on
Right.
you know that expression, right?
Yes.
So I in that sense I was a little fearful about stepping out and then failing somewhere else,
Right.
right? So
Especially because the job market was now getting back online after the whole
exactly.
crash and
Yeah, right. Of
the ghost
2000, right? It
jobs.
was back then.
It
That's
was a
right.
whole set of stuff. It was a whole set of
Yeah.
stuff that, yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. So with me, there was a bigger fear though of losing that security, and that fear was staying somewhere where I was just miserable, where I was just not growing, where the relationships that I'd built and developed with folks would just start eroding, right? Because of my dissatisfaction with where I was in the company itself,
Hmm.
and some of those things that started happening, right? Not intentionally, but if you're getting up and just going to a place and it's being reflected in your attitude, and you're not being treated with the same level of with the level of respect that you think that you should have and earn, and
Hmm.
that you've earned, then things kind of start falling apart, right? So
And was it impacting your personal life as well, like outside of work? That whole,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely. It's once you start feeling as if you're not totally satisfied with your work life. People will say, "Oh, yeah, and it's easy for you you know to not mix the two things, right? Your personal life with your work life." But we're all wired differently, right? And for some of us that's not so easy. So yeah, absolutely, it started affecting the relationships that I had with family, with friends. I would spend long hours at work. I would try to, I would become a little withdrawn. um there was multiple ways in which it was affecting the way that I interacted with folks outside of work itself. So yeah, and once it starts getting to that stage,
yeah.
that at that point that you just needed to take action,
Yeah, you have
right?
to, at that point, you have to
There's
do some serious self-evaluation and say, is this worth it?
absolutely,
Is this worth it?
absolutely,
And
absolutely,
yeah, and that, I
right.
mean, I know definitely for sure, because when you think of things like your 401k, you have debt because you had debt. You had like a mortgage, you have kids, you have all these things going on, and you're like trying to weigh it
Right,
out, you know.
right,
And
right.
it really have to do a lot of self-reflection to ask yourself, am I really going to take this on? Am I really going to
Yes,
put myself out there not knowing what's behind that door? But I
that's
guess
right.
the
You hit the
worst we
nail
could
on the
say,
head.
I know what's behind this door and I don't want what's behind this door anymore, so let me try another door.
Yeah, yeah, and
Right?
and that's exactly what happened. So,
Yeah.
so I I I decided to take that step of to leave,
So what happened?
and to
What
see.
happened when you got a job, another job?
So I found that it was the right move for me.
Yeah.
All right, because I found what I was looking for. I found growth opportunities. I found avenues that other avenues where I could learn different things, increase my skill set, add more value. Um, and don't get me wrong, I was very grateful for the time, for the 13 years that I spent um, in one place, because it wasn't all bad, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise I wouldn't have spent that length of time. It's just that I personally wanted something more, something different,
Yeah.
right? So to answer your question, once I left, I realized, wow, there's a whole other world out there, all right?
Yeah.
There's this is not so bad after all.
Hmm.
I'm a little bit risk averse, but then I realized that by taking that one step, that you know there there were opportunities there for me to really get the things that I wanted to do, and then in essence, by virtue of doing that, I made myself happier, and my
You
outside
kind of got like
life.
a sense of empowerment too. Like you did that first step, it was like,
Yes,
whoa, okay, what else
yes,
can I do?
yes, yes,
You
yes,
take that step,
yes.
the
Yeah,
world will
right.
come
So I
crashing
did it.
down.
So once I did that, I was able to. It was easier then for me to do it again, which is
Exactly.
what I did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's true.
I've
It's true.
I've switched roles, and money doesn't make you happy, right? But
Right.
you talk about being empowered. After that, with the skill sets and with the skill sets that I had and the experience that I had, I was able to command, make myself more marketable, and by so doing, I made myself, um, you know, I put myself in a position where I was able to negotiate my way into better situations, right? Not
Okay.
just from a salary level, but also from general role level, which is what I was able to do with my last position.
So you were able now to all the different experiences you had. You come in and you're like, okay, I don't really need you as much as you think I need you. We both need
Exactly.
each other, so you're gonna go into that
Abs-
situation like that.
Absolutely, and that's what people don't realize, right? When you go to a job interview, um, you you have to realize that you have to have the mindset that you're working for you, right? You're not putting yourself in a position where you have to sell yourself to somebody else. They have to sell themselves to you as well.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
two-sided,
two-way
it's a
street.
two-sided street. Yeah,
Exactly, it's a two-way street. So
yeah,
yes, I can add value to your company, I can add value to what you're doing, I can add value to your job function, but what are you going to be doing for me in
yeah,
return?
yeah. I
And you
think
shouldn't be
more of us need
bashful
to
about.
realize that part. Like,
Exactly, and right, and you shouldn't be bashful about that, right?
yeah,
So so yeah, the thing with staying at some place for so long is that after a while, and I don't know if it's a natural thing that occurs, but you start getting into a position where you may possibly get taken for granted, right?
yeah.
And that's the sense. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but that's the sense that I got when I was with that very first company, right?
I think
That
also
I was
too,
being
you when you stay at a place for so long and you're cemented there for so long that sometimes
right.
you yourself don't even think that you deserve better.
It's true.
You
It
know?
is true. It is absolutely true because I started feeling that way. It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
And you start doubting yourself, right? It's like, oh,
yeah.
geez, where am I going to go with these skill sets now?
So let me
But
ask you now then. So now that you have taken the leap and then a leap, because after the first leap, the second step is easier, right? So
absolutely,
now let's
absolutely,
say you're on the
absolutely.
train, it's a long commute, and you meet
Hmm.
somebody on the train, and maybe in their 40s, they've been on the
Hmm.
job for a whole set of years. They're
Hmm.
worried about, if their skills are transferable. They really want to leave their job because who knows what happened. It could have been like, just a hostile work environment. Maybe they have an ex-spouse there who might have been,
Right,
with a colleague, and it
right.
happens. The boss is just like a tyrant, and they have kids, they have mortgage, they have all these bills, everything piling up on them, but they hate where they are. What would you say to this person?
Um, the first thing I would say is that if they're in a position again where they're not happy, then there's some action that needs to be taken, right? But in a case like this, it's a personal decision.
Hmm.
I would never put myself where in a position where I'm encouraging folks to leave the role that they're in, because again, we're all wired differently.
Yeah,
And stepping out on, whether it be stepping out on, to seek out new opportunities, or stepping out on your own, that's a real personal decision, right? So that's one of the first things that I would tell them, right? you know do some soul searching. you know do some soul searching, find what it is that you need, be clear on what it is that you need out of a career,
yeah,
right? And once you've determined what that is, then take the steps to achieve that. If you're not achieving that where you are now, or there's no possibility of achieving that where you are now, then find a way to achieve it elsewhere. All
so
right.
should they make a list? Should they make a list and kind of
I
go
think
there?
so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be very helpful, right? To sit down, formulate a checklist of things that's most critical, and prioritize them, right? Okay, this is ranked, out of five. This is ranked a five in order of priority, five being most important. I'd rank money as most important.
Right.
If it's a case where you feel like you just want to add the most value that you can to a position, and that's the most important thing to you, then seek out an opportunity that gives you that opportunity to do that, right? And there's a varied list of things that you can actually put on that list. But that's a good point. Come on, you should definitely, they would definitely then need to sit down and, in order to define what it is and get a good sense of what it is that they're looking for, put things on
Yeah,
paper. right?
That's actually a good advice to give somebody, because it's easier to stay on message when you kind of itemize what it is that you want, what you
Right,
want to look for,
right,
what is
right,
important to
and
you. You when
right,
you have that idea in your mind, it's easier to stay on message and you kind of work
right,
towards it in a better way. So
exactly.
one thing I want to say is that well, you are the Costa, right? And I know in Jamaica, Kingston, the Costas are entrepreneurial. Yeah, right.
They definitely are. I don't know of anyone that actually works for anyone with my name. So
So I know,
you're
knowing
absolutely
you, I
right.
know that you are entrepreneurial yourself. You have done a bunch of different things.
I've dibbled and dabbled in quite a few things.
Yeah,
You know.
so just give us an idea of how you've been able, and like, because you've had significant management roles and stuff.
Yeah.
How have you been able to balance doing your entrepreneurial stuff and working?
So I would say that it's been easier when I've decided to do things that I love to do,
Yeah.
right? So I had some keen skill sets with I started out in this IT business from the ground level, right? And I was a desktop guy that was fixing computers and all of that stuff. So one of the first things I did was I started a company called Soho Nerds back in New York. I had quite a few clients, and
Hmm.
I would go into these small business places, and I was their go-to guy. All right, so I enjoyed it, and it makes it easier, right? Because to me, it's not extra work. It's
Right.
just me doing something that I enjoy to do after work.
So
All
how did you
right,
make that connection to get the clients? How did you make that connection?
that's that's a good question. So again, just meeting people, talking to people, networking, letting them know what your skill sets are, and then put in a plug for yourself, right? Letting people know, look, this is what I'm good at. If you know somebody that has a need, give me a call, right? and
Right.
and and you get people. So a part of that too is just knowing how to develop good relationships, right?
Hmm.
Just building relationships with folks, earning their trust, and then demonstrating that what you say you can do, you're able to do. All
Right.
right, because
Yeah.
that has to be demonstrated. Otherwise, you come across as a fraud. All right.
Right.
So so that's the first thing, right? Anyone that you meet, and you strike up conversations with them and let them know, look, if you need someone that needs my skill set, let me know. Or if you know somebody else that does, then let them know, right?
Mhm.
And like I said before, once you develop that kind of trust and relationship in people, um at least 5 times out of 10, you will get some good feedback.
You just had to keep
Right.
going at it. You had to be persistent. You have to
Exactly,
be, you
exactly,
know,
exactly. You
um,
have to absolutely be
yeah.
persistent. You have,
You had to
yeah,
put yourself out there. You had to put yourself out there.
absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely.
So let me tell you,
Yeah.
this was
So
a
so
yeah.
yeah, so that's one thing, right? And I said I dabbled in a bunch of things. I think you knew at one point that I had like with with a girlfriend that I had at the time, and we had a photo booth business,
Yeah.
right? And um and
Should
and
we
that
spill
went
our
well, and it's
beans here?
something, and
Should we
it's and
spill our
it's
beans?
yeah.
Should we spill our beans? Well, we
No spilling of beans.
no spill
So
our beans.
so
Just a little
no,
beans.
okay, go ahead,
Just a little, because
go
it's
ahead, go
funny.
ahead, go
So
ahead, shoes.
okay, I'm gonna spill a little beans just for full disclosure, right? So
Uh,
Lou was trying to track a little bit, right, Lou?
uh, yeah, this is true.
Lou was trying to track a little bit, bring my stew oxtail and thing.
Yeah, true. I
And
won't
then
lie.
what were you not telling me, Lou?
Who who wouldn't?
And what were
What
you
was
not what were you not telling me, Lou?
that I was in a miserable situation, and
And you were living with your girlfriend.
oh boy, you see, you're really calling me out now.
I'm calling it out. I'm calling it out. It's all good. It's all a good one.
that's that's good, but I was being a man.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, okay, back to the photo booth. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, it's something that I found that I enjoyed, and so I it to me it wasn't, again, it wasn't extra work, right?
Yeah.
You got to it puts you in a position to meet new people, network,
Hmm.
and when you're doing something again that you enjoy, you don't consider it to be work,
Yeah.
right? The the extra income is just a plus after that,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying it's not important. It's definitely important, right? Because otherwise, you really wouldn't be motivated to do it in the first place. But
Hmm.
then, but the extra motivation comes from the fact that you're doing something that you really enjoy, and you you tend to put a lot more effort into a situation like that.
Yeah. And what else? What else you have going on right now, like on the side?
So right now, with I've been blessed, right, I've been blessed to have worked for companies that have paid me decently. I'd put it that way. And
Hmm.
so with some of that decent pay, I've reinvested some of that money. And the way I've done that is I've invested it into smooth a couple of properties, right? Namely apartments.
In
So I
Jamaica?
have yeah, name and I've gone back to Jamaica. So I have two apartments in Jamaica that I do short-term rentals with.
Right.
All right, and then for a short period of time, I did the same thing with an apartment that I have here. All right,
Right.
so again, the market pre-COVID, and even now, the was favorable, right? I would say it
Nice.
that way, and I was able to earn some extra income by doing that.
That is
All right,
excellent.
so yeah, but again, it all comes back to speaking about risk and being risk averse and what you do with your investments. Do you hide it in a savings account, or do you step out and um, try to build yourself up, right, by
Yeah.
doing some things that you might not necessarily be uncomfortable with, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
not nothing is promised, right? There's no guarantees to going into any kind of business,
Yeah.
but you have to have faith. You have to manage
Hmm.
the situation that you're getting into. If you need to take a class, believe it or not, you think that buying a property and having a short-term rental and throwing it on Booking or VRBO or Airbnb or one of these sites is simple, all right, and it just manages itself. But that's not the case,
Right.
right?
There's a lot of
Uh, it's a,
incentive. Hmm.
Exactly. In essence, what I was doing was getting into the hospitality business because now I'm servicing people, right? So I have to learn, what are the small things that I need to know in order to make these people comfortable? What do I need to communicate to these people? Right. So
Nice.
that's a whole different set of skill sets in itself. So,
Hmm.
and that's a good point, right? Whatever it is that you do, don't do it blind, right?
Yeah.
Know that there are things that you'll probably need to learn
Hmm.
in order to be successful, right? So
Yeah.
there's a whole new different set of sacrifices that you'd have to make on that front.
Well, you gave such good feedback, Lou. Thank you very much. I have to say that we have to wrap up because we're kind of running short on time. But
Right,
I
right,
want to
right.
wrap up. I want to put together everything that you said. You said, more or less that you have to make a decision for yourself if you want to stay where
You
you
do.
are or you want to leave. And you will. It's
Yeah,
a personal decision. You will have to know for yourself if it is a
absolutely.
situation where it's just bringing you down all the time. You don't
Absolutely.
have the energy. Then you may want to
Yeah,
take a serious
yeah,
self-reflection to really determine if you
exactly.
need to stay or go.
And Kimon, I'll add one piece to that, right,
Yeah.
before we wrap up. And we can't be selfish about that decision, right? It again, like I'd mentioned before, it has to be a case where you can't you take a holistic look. I'll say it that way, right? At everything that you have going on. If it's a case where it's providing a solid foundation for your family, then you need to have that conversation with your family, if
Right.
whether it be a significant of other spouse, your kids, have them be a part of that conversation,
Because it affects
right?
them. It affects them. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So be fair,
Yeah.
and share, your intentions,
Right.
right? Or help them, be a part of the decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And
So, but
also, you
right,
also mentioned that so you have to make sure to be inclusive, make sure you have an open line of communication, make sure to
exactly,
educate yourself, you know,
exactly.
just continue the education. Don't stop educating yourself because you're
That's
always
right.
doing something new. And,
That's right.
it's easier to take the second step once you make the first step, but you have to make the first step.
That's right.
It's
That's
important to
right.
be the first step. That's like
That's
that's a
right.
important thing. It's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. You hit it the
And
nail right on the
network,
head, I think.
network, network,
And
network. Yeah. Yeah.
network.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes. This was an amazing conversation, Lou. I hope
Yes.
you enjoyed
Thank
it as
you.
well.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to your little forum here.
Yes, thanks for coming on. I know
Yeah,
that people have got a lot of great insights, people who are thinking about exactly what you did in a company
right.
for a long time and
That's
weighing
right.
it out. I sure they have a lot of food for thought now to go and kind of consider and mull over and everything. So thank you
Yeah, I
very
hope.
much, Lou. Very much
No
appreciated.
worries. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, Lou. Bye.
Okay. All right. Take
I'm
care. We'll
going
be in
to.
touch. Okay.
Oh, oh shoot, did I?